we'll keep an eye out. If he comes in, we'll move him over. Oh, there he is.
Okay.
All right.
And I'm in a room. I've got Larry Hagan here as well. So
Hello,
there's three
everybody.
of us.
Any doodles in the room?
We're muted. Hold on. Say it again.
Yeah, I brought him with me today, Todd.
Great. Bring your dog to work today. And
Wish.
Chad, I think Nora had a conflict, so she's not going to be joining.
She's here.
Oh, she's here?
I'm here.
Oh, well, welcome, Nora. So looks like we have every locality along the fall line that's in CBTA, which was the goal, and as well as VDOT and Chet, and I see you and
Right.
Miles are on. So oversight, we don't have an agenda, so well, I guess we'll wing it. But the goal, I think, of this group is to kind of start talking details of schedule, project delivery, funding, funding plan for the fall line. And I guess maybe if we could touch on what we expect out of Friday's CBTA meeting, Chat, on the commitment for the FY21 and 22 regional funds, as well as the ask of the governor's office.
Sure. You want me to start there?
Sure.
Okay. So Friday's meeting is to, I think, bring some clarity to the October 29th proceedings, where we sent a letter from Chairman Thornton to the governor regarding what we think is going to be the ask. We know that there's going to be a gap between what FY21 and 22 regional funds give us and what the full cost of the fall line is going to be. The estimates for the fall line, we'll start there, have gone up since the last meeting due to a revised alignment through the city, which includes the Manchester Bridge, if we're starting on the south side, Commerce Road, Manchester Bridge, Canal Plaza, 7th Street, and then joins back to the original ATP alignment. So the full cost of the fall line, if we look at everything, bottom of the top is 193 million and change. And we know that the amount available for the amount of regional funds available is 104.5 million, which leaves a gap of about $90 million. So that's the ask that we think will come out of Friday's meeting to go back to not just the governor's office, but General Assembly as well. If you remember, in October, Senator McClellan made it clear that we can't just depend on the governor's office to do this. That she and Dolores McQuinn are both going to be working hard to get that into the GA budget side as well. So we have the revised estimates for fall line. We have a letter that's going to come out, and I guess a secondary thing to let everybody know is, well, hopefully you've all gotten the application form, the PDF for years 3 through 6 to start working on project applications there. We think that we've tested the form internally. It looked like it worked pretty well. It's similar in nature to what we did for our STP CMAC, but there isn't the pesky save issue because it's just a PDF. So you should be able to work on that. And we had said that the original due date for that was going to be the 17th of December. And then we're working Friday, we're working on FY21 and 22. Following that, we'll start working on 23 to 26, 27, and make sure that everything is moving forward accordingly towards smart scale application periods and other needs as well. I guess the other thing to make official on Friday is that we have a process schedule, which has responsibilities for TAC, for finance, for staff, and for the full authority listed out.
Thanks for the update. Could we get a clarification on the cost estimate for fall line? Because you said it was basically a funding gap of about 90. There's 104.5 available from CBTA regional. And what did you say the total cost was?
Total cost is 193.9.
Is that discounting the committed funding that's already on?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the total cost is 251.2 with a commitment of 72.6 noted in the estimates.
251.2. Okay. And Darren, I have a question for you, and pardon my lack of detailed knowledge of all the bridge names in the city, but which one is the Manchester Bridge?
So it's 9th Street.
Okay. So the one between Bella and Mayo.
It comes right by the Twin Towers where BB&T is.
Yeah, and the Canaza Plaza.
Yep.
Okay, so basically you have extra capacity on that bridge and you'll have a dedicated bike lane.
Well, yeah, actually it's a median. It's gonna be on the median. So
Okay.
yeah, there's some extra capacity to expand the median.
Nice. I think that will hopefully address all the issues that have been raised with using Potter Field for it. So
Yeah.
all right. So the draft letter you mentioned, Chet, that's going to be presented at CBTA on Friday, and you have that available to send out as a draft to anybody who would like it ahead of time, or you will shortly.
Yes. I got to do some homework, Mark, Liz. I'm looking at the numbers now and they're not adding up. So I just need, I'd like for you guys to take a second look at it too. Because if the total project cost is 251 and the committed funding is 72, that's not 193 million. So I just want to make sure we go back and take a look at that.
We'll do that, Chet. We'll do that this
Okay.
week.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about the math, Chet. I was trying to do that last evening and it wasn't happening up.
And you need that for Friday, right?
Yeah.
Did that come out of the last CBTA tax discussion? Where there were some projects identified
Also, it might,
to be overfunded?
can't hear you, Mark.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think at the last CBTA TAC meeting, there was a discussion about potentially increasing that there really weren't extra dollars available, and the way we had done the estimates, it made it appear as though some segments were actually overfunded simply because of the year of allocation. And in some cases, if they were previously committed projects, we were anticipating that the dollars were going to be for a project that was going to be farther out. So when the estimates were updated, they were done in current calendar year dollars. And I think the delta in the dollars that you might be seeing, and again, we can look at that if you like, but I think that was tied to the last CVTA TAC discussion.
Yeah, you're right. We took out the negatives
Correct.
in the gap column. Yeah, Barb, do you remember that? That's something that I think we all talked about.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Nothing like worrying about things though 2 days before the meeting.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that you if you can go back and look at the numbers the CVTA has seen before and just have that on a cheat
Yeah.
sheet for yourself. So someone doesn't go, I thought you told me it was 25 million. Why is it, you'll be able to respond to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, good idea.
Better to worry about it 2 days ahead of the meeting than at the meeting.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're good on the math, or we will be good on the math soon.
Yeah, we're good. I think, did you have a question?
My question was Todd's question. I was just trying to make the math work.
Okay.
Yeah, and Chad, if you could because I still am a little confused. So if you do figure out the math, I mean, like just a quick email with means this equals that would be helpful, because I understand. I do remember the conversation about the negative, but I'm still not understanding. It should be clear that here's the committed funding, here's the CVTA funding, here's the gap, and they just are all equal, add up. So if you could just show me something in a formula that says that would be helpful.
Yes, that'd be good.
Sure. Yeah, I think that essentially the quick I can do that, but the quick explanation is there were some projects that had received funding from other sources, and they were shown with the gap as having excess. So it was essentially a credit back to the full amount. But TAC discussed that and decided that it wasn't real to show that as a negative that would take away from the total need.
Mm-hmm.
So we decided to just take those lines out for those projects that had other funds that were committed.
No, and I completely understand that, but that doesn't tell me how still, here's the project cost, here's the committed funding, here's the CVTA funding, and then this is the balance that's due. If we're saying that 193 is the balance that's needed, but the total project is 251, I can't see, we're not understanding the math that gets us there. I don't know. I don't know if I'm the only one who's just still confused.
Well, I do think the authority members are going to notice that also. So if there's a way to add something to the chart or make a summary that goes with it that clarifies it, and my take was that some of these projects, now that we're in design, we have real numbers, more firm numbers. So the estimate that's shown for some of those segments is just that planning level study estimate. And now we have a better informed estimate, which is why there's more funding on the project. It matches the better informed estimate rather than the planning estimate.
And to your point, Barb, I know VDOT went back through and revised estimates for the different segments that were as defined in the original A to P study, and some of those estimates were different than what, at least in the case of Henrico, what we were using as cost estimates for the sections we're doing. Some of them don't, the sections mileage doesn't necessarily link up, but if you were to look across all of the sections of the county, our numbers are different than the VDOT revised estimates as well. So that was part of why we didn't support including that overfund number that was in that original spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And just a quick point, all of the spreadsheets that we've provided to the Secretary's office, to you guys, to everybody, have been in current calendar year dollars. So however that may need to be adjusted for whatever reason, I think it's important to note that they're all current year dollars. If a project is not going to be built for a number of years, the expectation is that the cost would go up. So there's been that footnote and kind of caveat, almost like a smart scale approach. Okay, we'll have a base year that we're doing all of our estimates off of, and then we'll adjust them accordingly depending on when and if funding is provided. But we had to start from at least one starting point, and that's the decision was made that we would use current year dollars for that. So I think it's worth pointing that out again. That's all.
Okay, so that's a good point. If the 90 that we're asking for this from the state for, if we know we can't deliver the project for 6 years, we need to be asking for 90 inflated for 6 years.
That's correct.
And so I know that you guys, VDOT, has been talking about how to actually implement the project. So what is the duration that you think that we should use for the inflation if you guys are managing the majority of the project?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't know that we know the answer to that right now, simply because we don't know when the funding may come. So if the dollars were available today, what would that duration be? It would also depend on how large the project is. If we're dealing with a very small segment because we're only doing a part of it, that's one duration. If we're dealing with, the entire or the majority of the project, it could certainly be different than that. I mean, I honestly, simply because we don't know how much dollars or how much funding may be actually allocated to this project, it's hard to answer that duration question. Which again,
Well,
comes
I
back
think
to,
if we're asking for 90 million, we should be assuming we get 90 million. And we need to, as a group, I guess we need to make a decision whether we think that 90 million, if we should inflate it as if it's going to show up in July, or should we, I mean, it seems like that would be logical, right? It's the budget. And I know 90 is optimistic, but I think our ask needs to be, assuming that we would get the 90 in July, and assuming that VDOT would be administering the majority of the project. I know that Henrico, you guys want to administer the stuff in your county, is that right?
Yeah, most of it, with the exception of the Chickahominy crossing, because that both goes in Henrico and Hanover. And we had that piece funded, and that's already kicking off with VDOT administration.
So Dirona, for you guys, are you administering the project, or would VDOT be doing it?
We're still figuring that out. We definitely, I think it's going to be probably a conjunction effort in some cases, depending on. We have a lot of areas that simply that simply may just need wayfinding and lighting, and then there's other areas, of course, like the bridge, that are maybe more technical. So right now we're literally trying to meet with VDOT coming up to kind of walk through the segments and figure that out. But I completely understand what you're saying. And I finally made sense of the numbers when we came to the 90. So I'm like, okay, 193 is the balance minus the 113 CVTA. And here's this 90 that Barb is saying. So I have unconfused myself because I was really confused for a second. But yeah, if it is in today's dollars and thinking about how far we may be from some of our sections, it may be better to look at that. But at the same time, I think 90 is a big ask already. And maybe we, kind of cross that bridge when we get there, but just my opinion.
Well, and that's kind of part of the intent of this working group, is to kind of figure out what the delivery methods and schedules are. So to Mark's point, I don't think we know have all those answers at this point, until we figure those pieces out. And once we have that spending plan and schedule, then you know what to inflate and by how much. So
I think though go ahead, Joe.
I was just gonna, thank you. I was just gonna suggest that, maybe just starting somewhere with a kind of like using the 6-year plan template and, entering the information that we know with, a relatively high degree of confidence. For example, what Henrico is planning to do. You guys probably have a pretty good feel for that. And then begin making some assumptions. And, we'll label it draft. I'm sure a lot will change, but just kind of having that starting point that lays out all of the different segments, assigns responsibility, in Richmond. I know in Hanover, our expectation is that VDOT would do the sections in Hanover, or the section in Hanover. I'm not quite sure if it's 1 or 2. And just begin developing the plan. We just got to start somewhere. And some of the assumptions we just have to, because we're in charge, we get to make some assumptions, and people are going to disagree with maybe some things, but that's a starting point.
So, sounds like a spreadsheet.
It is a spreadsheet. We've done the same thing with our local CBTA funds, where we developed it out to about 12 years, and we'll look to update it every year. But we made some big assumptions about how we're going to deliver our projects using our local CBTA money primarily.
I think though, for Friday's meeting, if we're going to tell the CBTA that we're requesting 90 million from the state, we need to let them know that 90 million is in today's dollars, and that means that the CBTA is going to have to make up more money. For one, the CBTA is already going to probably have to make up more money because the planning level estimates are going to increase as the project moves forward. So we already have that risk. We already are saying if we're not going to go into it with an inflated number, we are not asking for inflation. So there's that other gap. So the CBTA needs to understand that in addition to the 104, down the road, as this project develops, either they're going to have to try to get more money from the state, good luck with that, or be ready to pony up more regional money.
I mean, do we apply an inflation rate to the 193 now and state that in the letter? I mean, it's not going to impact the 104. That's all we got, but it'll make the ask bigger.
I don't know. I mean, it's sort of the difference between whatever 194 inflated minus 104 versus 90. It probably doesn't matter that much. It's a big number either way.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mark. So on the revised cost estimate effort that VDOT went through, from what we saw, it looked like there was a pretty healthy contingency built into that. Are you familiar with kind of how that was approached?
At a very high level, Todd, I think the approach that was taken was similar to the way we deal with estimates at this very early stage, unless we had a reason to be certain we could lower that contingency. So we really are taking a smart scale-like approach to an estimate at a very early stage in the process.
So, yeah, and I understand that. So I guess my point is that we may have a healthy enough contingency built into this. Of course, as we sit here, we don't know which way inflation and construction prices are going to go, that it's if we add a inflation on top of it now, it may or may not make any difference. It may or may not be needed. So
It changes the ask by applying 3% for 6 years.
yeah,
It changes it from 90 to 118.5 or something.
right. To your point, it's a big number either way. So.
Yeah, 114. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but actually, you're going to be delivering some of the sections sooner than 6 years. So, you know, you're going to be, some of the costs are going to be expended in the first year and the second year and so forth. So it probably is not whatever percentage you're going to apply to the total ask. It's
Right. Yeah, if you really want to get down to it, you need to split out PE and right of way and inflate those. I just did the quick and dirty version.
Understood. Yeah. Again, either way, we're going to be wrong. I guarantee it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the authority needs to understand that, because right now the numbers are very nebulous and subject to change. And there's no doubt about it. We'll be back talking to them about how estimates have increased.
We don't want take the wheels off the bicycle with them on Friday and
That's true.
get them in the weeds of that. I mean, it should probably be mentioned, but
Right. Yeah, I think it just needs to be clearly noted, you know, where we are with the estimate and the planning. And that it really is kind of more of a, I mean, there has been a lot of engineering work that's gone in, but it's still kind of a planning level estimate when you think about it, because we don't have detailed schedules and we don't have, you know, refined cost estimates.
well, there's also, with respect to 3 of our 8 segments of it, we have pending TA applications out there. So if those get TA funding or additional TA funding in the case of 2 of them, then that number comes off of the ask piece. So there's a lot of other kind of moving parts and pieces with respect to pending funding applications and everything else.
You guys made a good point in that this agenda is already out there. I think that's what the point that you guys were trying to make is the agenda is already out there and we're saying 90. Does the agenda say 90?
No, it's not in there.
It's in the letter that's to be distributed at the meeting, or hopefully in advance of the meeting to those on this call, so we can educate our members.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm making notes on the fall line estimate sheet right now, and I'm going to send that out to everybody here to take a look at to make sure I've captured everything. So that hopefully that can help explain, along with the numbers, what the reasons are for where things stand.
Well, I feel like we ought to inflate this number.
Or a portion of the number.
That's my 2 cents, is we're going in for an ask. We understand as projects develop, it's going to change and we're going to have to manage that. But we got one shot at an ask. And if we can add the inflation in, they're only going to give us what they're going to give us based on what they have. So we should put out a number and get as much in our ask as we can. And then manage that, whatever we get as best we can to stay under that number. But
spoken like a true Chesterfield staff member. Go big.
I mean, we don't have any indication of how much they have or what they're willing to. We don't know any kind of there's no insight on that, right? Order of magnitude of what we think we might get or anything. So.
No, I'm not aware of any numbers thrown out.
So I guess the question, as I'm looking at the spreadsheet, is do we include the inflation adjustment in the spreadsheet, or keep the 193 as shown and then reflect that inflation cost in the letter and show the number there?
I think show it in the letter.
Yeah.
But at the meeting, you know how we talked about clarify the math?
Yeah.
If you can have like a slide that clarifies the math and then says we took the 194 and inflated it, you know, it would explain all of that. So leave the spreadsheet as is, but then have a summary sheet that says what you did.
Okay. What's the rate we want to use?
3%.
Or 3%? Okay.
3%, and I guess the question would be for how many years?
I would say 6. If VDOT's administering, I think 6 is reasonable.
Mark, I know Shane is not here to speak to this, but I know in conversations we've had with him, he was confident that if at least portions of the project are delivered under design build contract, that we could have a more aggressive schedule. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, we would certainly have a more aggressive schedule in terms of getting it under contract with a, with a builder. And that allows us to get money started quicker, and it nails down the commitment quicker. How much it would actually shave off of a 6-year window at this point, that I don't know. I mean, the idea was to get it, a design build absolutely gets us to a committed number and gets the project underway much faster. It doesn't necessarily get us to an end significantly faster, but it gets that known out of the way pretty quick. And again, to get to a design build, we generally want to get to a 30% design level before we take it out there, and there's going to be some time associated with that.
So what I'm hearing is you're not comfortable taking anything off of a 6-year delivery timeline as a general rule.
I mean, I think the 6-year, 3% at 6 years seems reasonable from our perspective. And again, the one thing I would note is when you guys decided to go with the 193, you did already kind of inflate your numbers a little bit by taking off those what appear to be overfunded segments, because when you add the inflation back in, they're not as overfunded as what you might have thought. So I guess from a numbers perspective, are we starting from kind of the spreadsheet that WRA and Jason and everybody have finalized and inflating that number and taking the deltas out, or are we working off of a different spreadsheet? I would hate for us to be working off of 2 different versions of the same estimate numbers.
I don't think we have a different spreadsheet at this point.
The 193 represents a different number than what we had provided last.
But Mark, on the ones that appeared to be overfunded, I think what has happened is we kept the planning level estimate on the spreadsheet, but then we showed how much funding had been allocated to the project, and that funding was based on a more informed estimate, but we didn't update the planning level estimate on the spreadsheet. So that's why it looked like there was this overage.
If some of that was done, I'm not sure that was shared with us. I don't know that we have that, but I mean.
Well, we didn't change the spreadsheet. It was just, we saw a spreadsheet that had these credits in the balance column.
Correct.
And we said, those aren't really credits because the total estimate, even though it might say 5.3 for the planning study, we know it's really 6.3. And that's why there's $1 million credit. But we didn't go revise the total estimate. in the column. We just took out those credits.
Right, so your ask of the 90 million already reflected the fact that you felt like you needed more than what the spreadsheet was originally predicting, correct?
For a few certain segments.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I guess all I'm saying is if we updated that spreadsheet with the estimates all being inflated, some of those negatives would go away. The gaps wouldn't have as many or maybe any at all of those negatives. And then your ask might be different.
Is anyone, I'm having trouble.
I think so I'm sharing my screen. So I think what Mark is saying is, say for this 6D2, the estimate was 2.9 million. There's committed funding of 2.971. But if we inflated the 2.9 million, that $71,000 difference would go away. Is that what you're saying, Mark?
That's exactly right. And then
It may not for the 1.05 that's below it, because
But
it's
we're not working off the total estimate column. We're working on the 194 column.
That's right. The real estimate, not the planning estimate.
And,
The one,
and
where does the 194 show up in this?
that's this gap column.
Yeah,
What this is showing is the difference between the estimate and then any previously committed funding. So like the mile marker 32 in Henrico has 2.9 million committed already. That's why there's a credit showing. What we decided to do previously was take out any place where there is a credit,
Right. So we're
which made the change from 174 to 193.
Okay.
yeah. So we're only inflating the gap numbers, these positive gap numbers. Because in theory, anything with these credits is an active project.
Yes.
yeah,
That's-
so these two that are on the screen right now are both Henrico sections that, if you could slide to the left, Chad, I can verify it, but I think those are both funded or mostly funded sections that, yeah, so the Brook Hilliard one is the one that shows the funding deficit. That was a previous smart scale application that was not funded through smart scale, so it was funded through CMAQ and the HIT money. So the estimate has already been vetted by VDOT, so we were comfortable with the original estimate, not the reduced estimate. The same for Lakeside Community Trail Phase 2. That's a TA funded project that had already had a vetted estimate based on the schedule that we thought was deliverable. So we were comfortable saying not to reduce those numbers.
So if the
Go ahead.
committed funding is more, sorry for the feedback, I don't know what that is. If the committed funding is more than the total estimate, that is an informed estimate of a real project, and that should be the number that's inflated. And there's no credit, there's no overfunding.
Yeah, so the same thing down there at the Chickahominy River crossing, that was funded through smart scale.
Right, that's right.
So that was a heavily vetted number. In my opinion, it still may be low depending on how the bridge is constructed. So we were comfortable saying that full estimate needed to remain as is and not reduced. So we looked at every one of our sections that showed that it was overfunded and we're not comfortable saying that that money should come off.
More work has been done on those than this planning effort and the total estimate. Yeah.
And I can't speak to the sections in the other localities that show overfunded. So
Same is true for
The
ours.
caveat on all of these right now on the spreadsheet that's on the screen is that they were current calendar year dollars. And on that 60.2, if we put it back to kind of the year of, where the application was vetted and was funded for kind of construction in a future year, I don't know that we would have that $71,000 surplus. So I think what you're seeing on the screen right now, and the estimates that have been provided are a combination, in some cases, of planning level estimates for cases where we don't have a whole lot of application vetting, along with ones where we had a whole lot more information. And we tried to reference that when we did have applications that had been reviewed, whether it was Smart Scale or TAP or what have you. To keep it really simple in terms of explaining to folks maybe what we're doing, my recommendation would be to go and inflate the total estimate by whatever number of years and whatever interest rate the group is comfortable with. And if that's 3% at 6 years, I think the gap column will figure itself out in most cases. And your ask will be a higher number, and it will likely be higher than the 90. But I think by discounting what would appear to be overages, simply because we had estimates in current year dollars, you've already done that a little bit. To me, I think it's a whole lot easier to explain what we're going to and where we're coming from if we simply inflate the total estimate dollars by the same amount. Because going off the gap doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, because we're mixing apples and oranges a little bit.
And the
So-
total,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
Barb.
No,
I was just
no.
real quick, the total estimate column, Mark, is all in the same year dollars, 22, 21.
21, current calendar year dollars today.
Okay.
So that number is, I don't really know, 251.
Yeah.
So then it goes to 282. I think.
Well, we're still going to use the gap column to make the ask, but that'll be impacted if we change the total estimate to include inflation.
Correct.
So Mark, are you saying that in the gap column, we leave the red stuff?
I'm saying most of the reds, or at least a lot of the reds, are going to go away.
Yeah, they will. The gap is based on the total estimate minus the committed. So if the estimate goes higher,
Right.
most of those red numbers are going to
Oh,
be
okay.
reduced.
All
Yeah.
right. So we're going to add a column that says total inflated estimate
Perfect.
and apply that to each of these segments. And then the math happens. Oh, I'd love to see that. Can we do that?
Yeah, so real quick, the 251 million at 3% for 6 years gets us to 300 million. So what's the summary of the
But you have to do it project by project to deal with the gap.
but I mean, what's the total of the committed funding? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's in the agenda.
I mean,
Pull up
shouldn't it
that.
be, isn't that totaled at the bottom of the spreadsheet for column?
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
It is.
All right.
Let me just clarify something that Chessa just stated. As I'm doing the same thing offline, Chessa.
Okay.
So your 6 years, you're not counting the first year. You're counting 6 subsequent years.
Oh,
The
yeah.
First year estimate of 251. So if we wanted to go
Yeah.
6 years, it would be 291 versus 300.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you, Joe.
So Chessa, total committed is 72.6.
72.6. $291. 72. Sorry, Barb, did we get to 218? Is that what you said earlier?
No,
I
she said 118.
Oh, okay.
It was, no, I had 218 for something. What was that I had in there?
I thought that's when you took the what we're asked was 90, and then you inflated it by 6% to get to the 118.
No, that was only 114.
114. Okay.
So
But I
the
had
total,
something out there that was 218.
so the total estimate inflated for 6 years, 291 million at 3%, inflated 3%, minus the 72.6 million of committed funding leaves 218 million. And then
Minus the
C,
one,
minus the
four
one,
from CVTA leaves you 114.
that's right. And we had 90, so we would be asking for, what is that, 24 million more than what we had in the letter, the draft letter.
Gotta be
Yeah,
realistic.
So 114 is just 90 inflated 6 years.
There
Yeah.
there you go. See, I told you you had it.
It doesn't really, it didn't change anything.
And then we would want to check that Mark's theory about growing them individually will make up the gap on the negatives. And if it doesn't, there's a little difference there. We want to ask for that too.
Yeah, like I said, I'll add that column and then add some notes to the spreadsheet so that we can package that to distribute on Friday. And I'll send it out to everybody here to take a look at.
Oh, that was hard. So I had, I guess, two related things to cover if we're done with the math. Two unrelated to the math, but two related things to each other. And that is the Friends of Fall Line, aka Sports Backers, Bike Walk RVA, has been trying to get funding to do a design guideline for the trail, so we have consistency for look and feel of the trail, signage, all those elements. They had a planning level quote from Tool Design for somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 to do this effort, and had been, based on timing of availability of funding and grants, still are looking for that money. So I'd had an offline conversation with Shane. He thought it was probably a good idea because that's not anything that's really covered in the A to P study or necessarily anything that is automatically going to be covered. So I guess want to bring that up as a discussion item for the group. If that's something that through the mechanism of potentially Plan RVA, if we have the allocation of 104.5 million of CBTA regional is let a portion of that, since it would be non-federal funds, the 50,000 or whatever it is, go through them through a procurement contract, and let Sports Backers be kind of the manager of that contract with participation from this group on kind of the design guideline effort. Wanted to throw that out there for discussion.
I missed the front end of that. So Sports Backers wants to develop design guidelines. Is that what you said?
Yes. Basically,
Yeah, essentially, if you look at the Indianapolis Cultural Trail was kind of the standard. I think there's real need to have some kind of standards in place that can be used to cross jurisdiction boundaries so that the trail looks the same, the wayfinding is similar, no matter where you are, that kind of stuff. That's kind of what the design guide would look at, as well as look at cross sections and typicals and those kinds of things.
Chet, this is Nora. How does this relate to what Barbara Jaycox and the National Park Service is working on?
They're just focused, the National Park Service is just focused on trolley line, and it's more from a historic perspective in terms of wayfinding and signage that kind of brings people back to what the trolley line was originally and how it translates to today. I mean, certainly there wouldn't be different. I don't think the trolley line work has anything to do with the actual dimensions and appearance of the trail. It's more about the guidance, the experience, that kind of thing.
But it would, I think it would overlap with respect to the look and feel of the signage. You know, the National Park Service effort is kind of like historical marker type effort and, you know, features along the trail. So that could be integrated into the design guidelines, or if you have a historical location you want to feature, this is, you know, how we collectively approach it.
Right.
Everyone, this is Liz. I know that Sports Backers is talking about doing the design guidance. I also got a call from central office last week. They're interested in doing the same thing. So I don't know if we want to maybe put those efforts together, or what are your guys' thoughts? Central office basically wants to go kind of look at the whole alignment and do exactly what you guys were saying, that we want the trail to look like this where possible. If not, then you would, you know, follow XYZ. And we would obviously, they understand that we would work with this group and also the Friends of the Fall Line Trail. Do they have funding already to do this?
I think that's part of why Todd brought it up. is
They
we're
do
trying to figure out
not-
where that should come from.
They do not, Liz, does central office, are they offering funding for this?
The offer, they're checking to see if they can provide funding. So yes, if assuming we have the funding to do it, we would be willing to do it.
Well, then I vote for central office, and then let Sports Backers and everybody here just be part of the group, and that will make it easier.
Right,
Awesome.
that makes sense to me. There we go. So as soon as I get some information, Chet, I will shoot that over to you and we'll get that conversation started.
Okay.
Liz, would that be done through an on-call contract, or would that be done in-house? Or you don't know?
It would be done through on-call.
Okay. Yeah, that's great, and we'll just loop Sports Backers in as you find out more.
Yeah, and Liz, this is Diana. If you could keep me looped in too, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Every locality is going to be part of that, right? Developing the design guidelines, along with
Yeah, it should be
Fall Line and Sports Backers.
Yes. All
So-
the, you know, the relevant stakeholders.
Thank you for that, Liz. So related to that, we had our kickoff meeting for the Chickahominy Crossing with VDOT and Hanover and WRA, who's the on-call for VDOT that's working on that section. Coincidentally, WRA is also working on two of our sections immediately to the south of the Chickahominy Crossing. But we got into the conversation about trail width. We're designing everything in the county as a 12-foot wide trail and have a lot of documentation to support why it should be 12, but had some questions from VDOT, specifically Jason Williams, indicating that the planning level estimates that were on that spreadsheet we just looked at were all based on a 10-foot. The A to P study was based on a 10-foot. We had already mostly worked on our alignment and had started working our cost estimates before the A to P study even kicked off. So we continued to maintain a 12-foot section as our design standard. We communicated that through the A to P study team and were told, well, 10-foot is our default, but if a locality wants to do all or a portion of theirs in a wider section, the study won't prohibit that approach. But now we're getting pushback saying, no, that messes up everything with respect to cost estimates and uniformity of the trail. So Liz, I know I copied you on that email response back to Jason on the 19th of November. I'll be glad to share what I sent to him with anybody else interested, but I have had no feedback from Jason or anybody else at VDOT on that at this point.
And my thought was kind of that we would address that through this design guidance document. I think that'll come up. I don't think it'll just be a Henrico issue.
Right. We've got sections that we're building that are 8 feet.
Right.
And that's because it's along Route 1 adjacent to existing businesses and there's just no space. So we would like it to be bigger, but it's just too constrained.
No, and we certainly respect that, Barb, and I even said that in my response back to Jason. It's like, you know, everybody it doesn't have to be a uniform trail throughout. I mean, the Capitol
Yeah.
Trail is 10 foot for the most part, but in sections of Charles City, it goes down to 8 foot because you have less usage. As you get into more heavily used areas where you have a bigger mix of users, we maintain that 12 foot is preferred, and there's documentation across the country, even VDOT guidelines that recommend it should be 12 foot in those instances. So we're not saying Chesterfield, you should make yours all 12 feet. We're not even saying Hanover should make all theirs 12 feet. We hope Hanover does, but we want to, you know, our sections for the most part are going to be fairly urban in Henrico. So we're maintaining that 12 foot is critical. So just wanted to throw that out there to the group for consideration.
And the wayfinding piece of it will make it a consistent.
Yes.
The consistent signing and marking and all that will give it that regional connection even if the typical changes.
Right. I mean, somebody's gonna not choose to use the trail just because the trail width changes somewhere along the way.
Yeah.
I have an issue that just came to light with us, which is that VDOT is telling us we need a location public hearing for the alignment. And to me, it would make sense for us to do that for the whole trail and not piece by piece. When did that come up, Chessa? Which project was that about?
We were walking, we were coordinating with the district on our fall line segments, on our estimates and scopes and all that, so that they understood where we were at. And it was the segment, it was our application, sorry, for the segment in the abandoned trail, I think.
Oh, that Chester.
Abandoned rail, yeah.
That little Chester one. Mm-hmm.
And because it was a new alignment, they said we had to have a location hearing for it.
Yeah.
What's your funding source for that section?
TAP. We're trying to get TAP for it.
Okay.
But wouldn't you still have to come back and do a design hearing?
Yeah.
But I think it would be good to have a separate location hearing just to
Get
kind
that out of the way?
And to cement the alignment. Because we've got some alignment that goes behind residents. It's in Chesterfield, but it goes behind residents in Colonial Heights.
Right.
And we want to be sure Colonial Heights is fully on board, you know, just like we are. And let property owners have their say and express any concerns that they might have up front and try to get those things addressed.
Barb, is it the distinction that if you have a piece of fall line that is on new alignment? So if there's fall line that's on Route 1 or those segments, you wouldn't need to do a location, right? Just the segments that are off-road new alignment section.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we're just doing it would be just like a sidewalk project.
Right. So whatever.
Barb, if you were looking at, if you guys were looking at TA for that, wasn't there some type of public participation prior to applying for TA?
Yeah, we've got that covered.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's still more enhanced, I guess, is the point, because it's a public hearing, I guess, versus a public meeting. Okay.
Yeah, it's the defined location public hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I popped on for this same question because I wondered when VDOT did the planning efforts, were there any public hearings that were required, or was it just public input?
No public hearing.
Yeah, it was public information meetings.
Yeah.
And the alignment has since changed on a number of sections since that study. So.
I'd agree if we could do the whole thing at one time. It seems it would be beneficial to us all than doing small ones every time they come up.
Because you'd have the narrative of this is part of a bigger regional project and this segment is important because it's not just local to you, but it's a regional. You get some bullying power there that is part of a bigger project.
We can always blame VDOT, right?
We can't
Yeah.
have gaps in
Richmond
our
agrees.
trails, in this trail. It's not
No,
gonna just go away.
That's a valid point. So Liz and Mark, is that something that could be considered?
I think absolutely we can consider that, especially if funding is available in a way that would allow for kind of a larger chunk, or, you know, a very large chunk of the trail to be done as one larger project. So yeah, bottom line, we can certainly look into that. Makes sense. We agree.
That could be part of the pre-scoping money you got to get things going, Mark.
Reading my mind, man. Reading my mind. I like it.
You did, yeah. You know, we got eyes on that scoping money.
Let me tell you, man. That's good stuff.
So Mark, I know with the A to P, they generally did groups of 2 meetings just based on the length of the trail. So they tended to do one south of the river and north of the river. Would you, just for convenience of the public, you would think that would maybe be the same approach?
I think that's a very reasonable assumption at this point. I mean, it was logical and appropriate before. I don't see that changing now.
Or would it be virtual based on where you are with your COVID protocols?
So I think we've been doing a combination, and frankly, I think we get greater turnout with the virtual, but there are some times when people just are much more comfortable doing it in person. So I think that's still open for discussion.
Okay, well, speaking for Henrico, we'll be more than happy to work with you guys to help on locations north of the river, or if you want to do it in the city. I think the one that just had to hop off, or Hanover, any of the above.
That's it. We appreciate that.
So I have another topic. Can I bring it up?
I'm done.
Is it a future topic to strategize on if we have to start how we're gonna approach prioritizing segments? If we don't get it all funded and we have to pick and choose, is that a future topic? It's probably too much for today.
I would vote yes, future topic. I think we're ready to talk about that at any point, just based on where we are with our effort, but I don't want to commit everybody else to that. Plus, we're already an hour into this meeting, so maybe that can be a topic for the next meeting, and we maybe have a little bit more clarity on any additional money available through the state.
When will we have a feel for that? I think that Dolores McQuinn might have hinted at that when we would know about the budget.
I thought she said the draft was like mid-December, where their first like blush at it, but I may have heard wrong.
It was actually Senator McClellan, I believe.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think they said mid-December. So we're already beginning of December. So if we set the next working group meeting, gosh, if we go out past mid-December, we're Christmas holiday season. So maybe early mid-January.
For the next meeting?
Yeah, that way we might have some clarity on that.
Yeah, early January.
TAC is the 10th. CBTA TAC.
And is there a full 30 meeting early January as well?
No, it will be the end of the month.
Okay, so maybe we can.
28th.
That's right. So maybe we can, Chad, if you could send out a when is good? Sometime after the 10th and well before the 28th, so that week of the 10th and 17th of January, maybe.
Sure. Do that.
If everybody's good with that time frame. And then if maybe the homework assignment, if anybody has segments that they need to kind of flush out in terms of how they think it should be delivered, whether VDOT versus local versus design bid build versus design build, all those pieces and parts.
Okay.
So Mark, you're going to look into the location of public hearing?
Yes, we'll definitely do that. We'll get you some, we'll have some information, certainly for the January discussion.
And Liz is going to find us money for
Design guidelines.
design guidelines.
Yep, I'm diligently hunting.
And Chet, you're gonna send out revised math numbers and at some point the draft revised letter for it's gonna go to the full 30 on. Right.
Yeah, we'll shoot for end of the day today.
Chet, what we can do, if it would be helpful to you, we can take the latest spreadsheet that we provided to you, add those columns and just shoot it to you to look at, and then you can distribute that, or let us know if we've kind of not got it the way you were looking at. That'll just keep it consistent with what we have shared with other folks internally. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine, Mark. Thanks.
Okay. Just want to help, that's all.
All right, well, for a meeting that just happened and we had no agenda, this was fairly productive, right?
It was great.
All right. Guess we'll see some of y'all on Friday, bright and early.
All right.
All right,
Have a great
Bye.
day.
thanks,
Thanks.
guys.